Welcome back, everybody. We are live from what was sunny San Diego today. We had a beautiful winter day out here, not to brag too much about it. I'm at Jack Greenstock on Instagram, as well as Cannabuzz. You can also find me on Twitter at Jack_Greenstock. I'm going to get myself muted over here on the YouTube live stream and then say hello to all the good people of the panel. And I'm going to start off by introducing Matthew Gates.
Hey everyone, this is Matthew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I hope everyone's doing well in this time. And it is winter time where I'm at. I'm also in San Diego, and I have to say I'm enjoying the increased precipitation. If you want to find my information, you can find it on YouTube channel Zenthanol. I'm also on Instagram at SyncAngel and on Twitter at SyncAngel.
Thank you, as always, for joining us. Next up, we have Spartan Grown.
Hello, everybody. I'm Spartan Grown. I'm a organic home grower here in Michigan, or at work, I'm a synthetic commercial grower. So I kind of play both sides of that. You can get me at Spartan Grown, all one word, at Instagram, or also spartangrown@gmail.com if you don't do Instagram.
Good stuff. I think Coot sent you something over there, and keeping it simple makes it easy for people when you're going on shows like this. So cheers to consistency.
He's sending me lots of awesome stuff. Shout out to Coot, man. I owe him big.
I tried not topping a plant, one for Dr. MJ's Grow Challenge, but also two because he's like sworn against topping, and I'm like, everything else he says about soil seems to be pretty good information, so maybe I'll try not topping. And it actually turned out that the plant was super terpy, and all three of them that I didn't top finished really well, so maybe there's something to it. But with that said, Dr. MJ, welcome. How you doing?
Hey, yeah, no, it's been a good week. The NYGC is off and running. Well over 400 people now growing together. My seeds just started sprouting, popped up. I put them into Jiffies last night and I got them growing. So we're on day 3 here and going cruising in the New Year's Grow Challenge. Still time to sign up, everybody, if you want to grow along with us. We got a big giveaway in exactly 1 week. And then I have what I think might be the most efficient grow light ever made hanging up in my testing rig. I got the new prototype from Chill LED. Really absolutely sets a new bar. There's nothing that Shane or I have tested that's come anything close to this. So I'm going to be working on that video over this week, and hopefully by next weekend, you guys will be able to see that one too.
That's exciting stuff because I know he's been testing some good lights. I know a lot of people were unhappy that the HLG wasn't on there with some of their more modern lights, but it recently got on with the Diablo, and that scored pretty high. I know a few other ones like the Geek Beast and the ThinkGrow LED have thrown out some really good numbers. The MyGrow Array is looking really good. Yeah. But I'm just happy to see so many high-performing lights.
This one's in another class. I mean, this isn't even it's not like a step above that. They released sphere testing data at 3.17, I think. And you can toss that in. It actually did better than I predicted that would do with that number in the field test. So it's pushing 3. It's not at 3, but it's getting up towards there, which is sort of a huge leap up from where the rest of the market is right now. This is a prototype, though. They're doing this to show off, to show what's sort of possible, to show what the future of the market might be.
It's very interesting. I'd imagine there's probably a shit ton of diodes, and it might not be the most economical to produce, but it's cool to see that they're pushing the boundaries with what's possible in terms of efficiency. Next up, I wanted to give the American One a chance to introduce himself.
Hello, Jack panel and everyone in chat. Happy New Year to all. I'm the American One on YouTube and the American One _ Keens on the IG. If you search the American One, there'll be a little guy with an American-looking top hat, and that would be me. If you want to find me there. And yeah, I'm glad to be here tonight.
We're happy to have you. I know that you had theorized that you might be late to the show this evening, and so did Brandon. But both of you seem to make it here on time, so I'm grateful for that. First, I'm going to give Kyle a chance to introduce himself, and then we'll go over to Brandon last, so he has time to set up his audio and everything.
Hey everybody, I'm glad everyone's here. I hope everybody had a good Christmas and New Year's. But yeah, my name is Kyle Breeder. I specialize in feminized seeds. If anybody's looking for that, I do have a website at the letter P followed by breeding.com. If you're looking at anything I'm kind of been working on, which I haven't really posted much lately, but I did just harvest, so I'll be having some pictures coming soon. You can find me on any social media platform at Predicated Breeding. And Jack, thanks again for hosting. I'm glad everybody's here, and I'm happy to be here.
We are short Noah the grower and Aaron the grower this evening. They won't be able to make it. I think Aaron's spending time with his family, and Noah's just not feeling the best this evening, so he's going to take the week off. But next and finally, I want to pass it over to Brandon Rust.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Awesome. For anybody who doesn't know who I am, my name is Brandon Rust. You can find my social media at Rust Brandon on IG. You can find the body of my work. I'm the cultivation director for Majestic Craft Cannabis. I'm part owner of Black Label Organics, and I own Bokashi Earthworks as well.
Cheers, man. Welcome back. I just want to say I saw one of your more recent updates from the Light Dep greenhouse, the Black Label Organics over there, and it's looking fantastic. Pretty early in flower still, but I've grown enough flower to recognize when you're going to have a good run, and I'd say it's looking like it's going to finish up there pretty damn nice. So cheers to you on the first run, setting up what is looking to be like a successful, I don't want to jinx you, but it's looking like you're off to a great start over there. So just wanted to give you an opportunity and maybe talk about what you were most excited for finishing up there on that first run.
So our first run, we decided to pop a bunch of seeds. I have some clones, some stuff like the Death Breath, Sour Cheese Berry fronts, which are kind of stuff that I picked out of the very first hunt at the beginning of the year at Majestic. We're running a bunch of stuff. We have over 40 varieties, 200 different over 200 different phenos. So hopefully we're gonna put together like maybe like a testing thing where you bring like community members in, cannabis reviewers. I think Big Smo will probably come out. Working with him on some stuff. I just got a lot of stuff going on. I'm really excited about this run because one of the most exciting is that my longtime friend, my mentor, and my teacher, I was able to bring him out here and get him into the legal market after he's been almost growing in the traditional market for almost 30 years. And this is going to be his first legal harvest. So I'm very excited to see that for him because it's been a long road for both of us.
I know that first crop for you was an emotional one because having gone through what you went through to get to where you were at that point, it was a long road. So I'm happy to see that you're spreading that love and giving back to the guy who kind of showed you the ropes when you were getting into it and allowing him to have the opportunity now that you've set up.
Yeah, Oklahoma's really interesting because there's so many opportunities here. I turned down job offers and I turned down consulting opportunities simply because the scope of work is just too great. Oftentimes, I would, take too much of my time away from my projects that I already have and the people and partners and things that I'm already doing. So it's really interesting out here. Cannabis is definitely booming. And I think that it's going to be a good central hub for when federal legislation moves on through.
Oh, what I was thinking too, when you're talking about having Big Smo out there, man, you just got to get a cell phone and record like 30 seconds of him doing like a little fucking song for us, man. Tell him to hook us up, lace up this show.
Oh, yeah. So one of the cool things is he loves cannabis. He's going to be moving out here, and I'm making a variety. We're looking for something that's really heady, something very uplifting, and he wants to kind of market. He wants to call it Finish Line and kind of market to like the country folks, like his people, because I think the only other kind of brand out there like that is Willie's Reserve. So I'm going to be making a variety of cannabis for him, and we're going to be doing some marketing, different stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like his kind of his music too. It's like the mix. He takes
hip
hop. Yeah, hip hop.
Hip hop. That's great. That's my first term here. That's my first time hearing that term before.
Yeah, and what's really cool is I just I popped some seeds for the New Year's Grow Challenge, and for this whole tent grow, I'm gonna be kind of showcasing like Bokashi products and kind of doing like a nutrient feeding regimen all the way through, so I can showcase people like a really simple organic method for cultivating.
I want to say it'd be badass if Big Smo or anybody who's interested wants to throw out a attempt or even just like a mock up for an intro song. I always love that about GrowTube. They had Mendo Dope do their intro song, and it just like I could hear it in my head right now thinking about it, like GrowTube sitting at the round table. Like it's a good way to start the show, and shorter I think would be better because I don't think anybody wants to sit through a longer intro than they need to. We already kind of extended on introducing ourselves each week, but I think that adds a nice element to the show. And we're almost 100 episodes in. We've been coming here every week for almost 2 years, so I think it's high time. And maybe somebody in the audience has some of those talents, or one of us can link up with somebody who is like a Big Smo type person.
When we get to 100, we can sell the show to syndication, right? Isn't that how it works?
I'm pretty sure it's a little bit more zeros than that, but yeah.
No, TV shows that get to 100 episodes, usually that's the benchmark for going into syndication. So they always have a big 100th episode, episode to celebrate that, because everybody's going to get paid. I don't think we're going to exactly get paid, but we should do something to celebrate our 100th.
We're definitely not going to get paid, but I mean, Joe Rogan, he didn't probably get paid too much in those first 100 episodes of his show, and now he's at like 1,000 plus, and he just got paid 100 million. I'm not saying that that's where we're going, but
I'll tell you what enriches this show the most, not to interrupt, but that's all of us leveling up. Dr. MJ Coco and you too, Brandon, which is what I was going to say actually, was that I really appreciate seeing you grow and seeing everyone on the panel grow in our own ways. And I think that really brings a lot to it. And certainly helps when we take that information and we use it for a general good, like answering the chat's questions, that sort of a thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited that Brandon, he was just talking about, he's growing with us in the New Year's Grow Challenge, and he's trying to sort of demonstrate growing organically to everybody. I guarantee you he's going to have a huge little following watching his every move if he follows along with that. And that's really what it's all about, right? I mean, that's the kind of information we're trying to spread and take new growers that are really craving this kind of information, take them under our wing. So I'm excited to have Brandon involved in that.
I need to step up at some point and get over my old ways of not posting live plants, because that's what screws me over out of the New Year's Grow Challenge. Is like I never actually post my plants while they're alive. I wait till like after they're harvested and do it kind of sequentially. But I wanted to say I totally agree with
the posthumous grow reports. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to say is I'm just also enjoying seeing the panel's success. Both Dr. MJ, Brandon Spartan over there and his commercial aspects, the American ones. I've seen a lot of his breeding work in some big gardens, and people seem to be finding great stuff and loving it. And I wanted to check in on Kyle Breeder, because I know you don't get to talk as often, but I remember you saying recently that you were getting a job at a facility there over in Mass, and I just wanted to see if that's still the current thing that you're working on, and get an update on how that's going.
Yeah, it's actually really exciting, Jack. I appreciate you, shedding that light. So there's a gentleman in California that has a nursery. To be specific, it's Hendricks Farms, and he collects legitimate genetics and gets them checked out professionally. And basically what's happening is he knows a guy up in Maine who has a small facility / dispensary. Well, they want to do a collaboration with a guy in California. He's like, well, hey, you should talk to Kyle because he lives up in Massachusetts. And long story short, we did a 3-way Zoom call, and I have been given the job. And the gentleman the guy in Maine, basically who's kind of getting the investors and all the other stuff for this whole project. He was going to rent a warehouse out down in the Worcester area of Massachusetts, but basically what's happening is these owners of these warehouses are charging ridiculous amounts of money because they know how much money is involved. So he bailed out on that, and now he's buying a warehouse cash straight up in Leicester, Massachusetts. And that is going through, but apparently come July, we will be cultivating. So prior to July will be, the build out, the electrical work, and everything else that comes with that. And the coolest part about it, though, is, Massachusetts doesn't really have much going on, man. I mean, there's facilities, I wouldn't say everywhere, but it is populated, but there is no fire up here. There's no one that's killing it. There's no one leading the charge. I mean, everyone's making money, but there's no true good brands up here. The flower is horrible. And I've been to multiple dispensaries where you go to squeeze the flower and it explodes in the powder because no one knows how to really control that, the environment of where the flower's in. So the highlight of the whole thing is, the guy in Cali is going to basically bring legitimate West Coast genetics. And then I have, obviously the material that I have and the guy up in Maine, we have the East Coast. So we're gonna have this huge East-West Coast collaboration here in Massachusetts. And once that does well, which it should, I don't see why it wouldn't, we're actually gonna open the first nursery here for clones and stuff like that up here. So it's gonna be this huge project. It's really exciting. It's a lot of pressure on me because obviously, if I can't put out, then I'm gone. So, but I'm excited for it. It's gonna be a big thing, and I'm excited to see where that whole thing goes.
I believe in you, man, because like Spartan over there and like Brandon, when you've had the opportunities or when we've had the opportunities, I feel like we've risen to the occasion. And I've seen Brandon have success scaling up. Spartan and the guys over at Mitten Canico, from caregivers to commercial, did an amazing job. And I like their whole like caregiver crafted mentality of still keeping that level of quality, but at scale. So I do believe that it's possible if you scale up right and you just get a good team underneath you and keep that same passion for the plant and love for it. I'm curious what kind of square footage you're working with, because I know Brandon and Spartan, although they're doing commercial production, it's still not like acres and acres yet. So they have some more control over the quality of the production. So I'm curious what size warehouse, if you have any idea, and do you know what type of lighting and things like that you're going to be getting in there with, or is that still up for decision?
Yeah, so the initial warehouse, which obviously when things go well, there's gonna be expansion, but right now it's an 8,000 square feet, which I YouTubed it, because obviously I don't have a visual imagery of what that is, and it's manageable for sure. It's not too big. When it comes to the build out, basically what I was told is I am in charge of the whole operation, but the guy in California will be providing all the SOPs and build out. So I just need to follow how basically, because California, the guy down there, you guys all know what's going on down there. I mean, there's other places too. I'm not saying it's just Cali, but basically I need to follow the SOPs from what he wants. And then that's kind of just where that's at. So.
I'd say if, Hendricks Farms is established and reputable out here, and if they have SOPs that they're handing over to you, that is like IP in a sense. Like a lot of people wouldn't just hand those over. So it's good that you're getting into business with them and you're going to learn a lot from their SOPs. You'll probably learn 80 or 90% of it hopefully works. And then you'll probably have to figure out a 10 to 20% that works better for your environment and your facility, because even though they've set up probably X amount of facilities in the past, every single one is going to be a little bit different, and there's going to be a learning curve, even if you follow their book to a T. And I guess I'll pass it back over to Brandon for a second and see what his thoughts are on, after setting up, was there anything, that you didn't expect? Or I'd imagine that everything doesn't just snap your fingers and work perfectly the first run. Like there's always something that you can improve and think about. So I'm curious what with scaling, what kind of thoughts you have on that? You're muted.
You muted or something, yeah.
Oh, I had my volume down. So for me, it comes pretty natural to be able to, it's just maintaining more of it. So it's just the willingness to do the actual work and not be lazy. I mean, a lot of people think that, I think there was a mindset that growing weeds like easy, kickback job, and well, it is if you love it, because if you love what you're doing, you don't really consider it work. However, for some people, they don't have the heart, right? They don't have the passion, and it's just a job. You want people on your team that are passionate about the plant, that want to be there, that want to do the work, that want to participate and be a part of what's going on. That's a huge factor. Also, for me, there's two different aspects, right? Because I have so many different things going on, right? I came out here as like to fix an operation and to basically build a company with investors that weren't from cannabis. This was an extreme challenge because, well, for obvious reasons, if you're not from cannabis, you don't understand that it's community oriented. You have to understand the marketing, there's just so many different aspects, that it's not just like, oh, you can just throw stuff in there, make money. Like And it's a numbers game. So you have to be able to do things to please the people who you're working for. You know, you want to make sure things run smoothly and are getting done, and you have to have open lines of communication. And that can often be really hard, especially if you don't openly have access to funds and you have to, you know, get approval for the things that you need. Sometimes that can set things back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to say about investors from outside of cannabis is one thing I have noticed is oftentimes they definitely overlook the culture aspect. And when that comes to sales, that can entirely like ruin a whole company. Like if you get exposed as, and this is nothing against like the police, but like, let's say they're really buddy with police, or they were a big person in like police unions or something, that doesn't play well in the cannabis space. Like, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but that's just sort of how it is. And if like they were caught snitching, for example, if they have like a record of, you know, telling on people versus taking prison time, those are things that don't play well in the cannabis industry. But also business practices, how they do and conduct themselves, can completely like shoot somebody in the foot and make basically a big portion of our community just completely turn their back on you.
Well, and the best part about it is that they tend to really focus on the marketing too, so people learn really quickly how bad they are.
Exactly.
At least sometimes.
So
they carry that professional aspect into it, and they market themselves, and people realize how, like Matthew just said, how quickly they're like not within this community.
But it's really about, you know, putting the right people in place. And then once the team members are there, and everything, as long as everything's moving, investors, people who are setting up businesses are always happy to just step back and let things run smoothly and let you do your thing. As long as it's functional and it's working, right? And they're not coming out of pocket for anything. So, but then, however, there's a different part of it too. Because I have my own farm with my own partners, we don't have to go through anybody to get things done. If I need something, I'll just go and get it. And I have a receipt for that. You know what I mean? Like if I know I need something, I'll go get it. If I know when things need to be done. I know exactly, you know, what's gonna, you know, it's just different. You don't have to ask anybody. I can do whatever I want. You know, I can go in and I can make like important decisions. Like, do I want to take this crop and have it harvested by some of the best processors in the state? Or do I want to, you know, do the regular thing with it? And that's one of the things that we're going to be doing at my farm is we're going to take a large portion of our material and we're going to have it, because there's a really great business model out here, and, you know, wholesale for fresh frozen rosin is great. And so the margins on that, eliminating, you know, having to process the material, and the return on it can often be greater of a return. And then you also get free marketing. People that you work with that have already won awards. You know, I've won an award out here for my flowers. So I've already been approached by all the guys that have also won awards for their material, because they also want to work with the best flower producer. So if you work with these, it's kind of a marketing thing, because you instantly gain access to their distribution channels. Because
and their whole fans, everybody that may have never heard of you that's a fan of theirs, when you become one of the products they wash or they process, then everybody's like, who didn't know who's, you know, Black Label Organics, that they're gonna know after that, and they might become a lifetime fan from that one interaction. So I think collaborations are great, 100%. And I also wanted to say it's awesome to have that level of control. I wanted to actually pass it over to Spartan Grown, because I know they went from basically a group of caregivers to a group of caregivers running a commercial facility. So I was curious if you had any like growing pains over there with Mitten Canico, because it looked to me, because I've been following it ever since it's been around on Instagram, but it seemed like you guys started off pretty strong. But I'm curious from your perspective on the inside, like what were some of the maybe stumbling points and things that you had to learn from the start?
I think the biggest, let me see, I think that the biggest challenge for us, we'll say it that way, the biggest challenges for us was just keeping up with the changing regulations. They keep you on your toes, where you have to just keep doing things. And a lot of times it makes things harder because the regulators don't know what it's like to grow, obviously. So those things, one example would be our very first harvest. It failed for heavy metal testing. So, you know, that was a pain in the ass to track down where that was coming from. And, you know, when we found out it was the substrate, obviously we changed companies and fixed the problem, but that was months of figuring shit out and sending different things to be tested and thousands of dollars of testing. So it's not cheap, and you don't get help from the state.
What substrate was that, if you don't mind revealing?
Can of cocoa. And I don't mind revealing because of their response when approached about it. They just told us if we want to pass testing to not use their product. So that's what we do, and that's what we tell everybody else when they ask us about Canna. And they said, well, coming from Canna's mouth, don't use their product if you want to pass fucking heavy metals testing. So it was a bad batch. It was a bad batch. It wasn't like all of their shit is bad. We've had other crops that were behind that one that was in Canna, and they still passed. It's obviously was a bad test, but just because of the company's response, we're not going to use them.
Consistency is important too if you're going to use any kind of product, because like recently I heard someone speak on, they tested various bags of the same soil from different places, and none of it was really consistent except for there was one. Yeah, so
it's not.
Keep that in mind.
So here's the thing: when it comes to and this is a tip for the home growers and people who are getting into this and going and grabbing potting soil and different organic soils. Even the soils that are marketed for cannabis, even these water only soils, a lot of times they don't have enough nutrition in them to get you through a cycle, even with a short veg time. They're inconsistent, even some of the best ones. And the problem is you can never really get a consistent batch, I think, when you're doing these massive scales. And I think it just has to do with different environments. If something's a little more hot and humid, that soil is going to start cycling more. So I've seen people that I consult with get fresh batches of soil and test soil from the same company, and it's just different pallets. And the only difference is one's been out in the sun longer, and you get a variable, just from things like that. So another instance we bought 200 yards of Build a Soil Light Blend for the farm. And I first had it tested, and I would have had to amend that soil so heavily right out the gate if I wanted to plant in it how it was. However, we actually didn't end up planting or using that soil for about 2 months. We ordered it because I knew that the soil was going to be hot. After I tested it, when we had it in the beds, the chemical composition of that soil had changed. So the same exact soil had a better test 2 months later, where there was less ammonium in it. Things had cycled a little more. The microbial, it wasn't as hot biologically speaking, because when you get fresh batches of soil, oftentimes they'll heat microbial activity. That also helps cycle nutrients as well and stuff. So, it was good to go when we planted it, and you can see the results, but those soils can change drastically just depending on your environments.
That's a good point. I think every single producer has their own challenges. Some of them I've heard have been moved to producing indoor to try and alleviate some of the issues with bugs, make it indoor, store it indoor kind of concept. But even that can, if you store it on a grow store shelf next to one that was stored outside for months, they can get from one bag to another sometimes. So there's lots of issues with bagged soils. A lot of people, shout out to Smiley's Garden in the chat, can make their own. He does the Coots Mix modified, just by buying a bale of peat and then mixing it up with aeration and all the other organic, you can use third compost, which he recommends worm castings, but there's a lot of ways to make your own soil. But I do believe, personally, I've had great experience with a water only soil, the Michigan Made Mix, M3 Swanson on Instagram. I think they do a good job. They have a pretty fancy machine. If you look over at their Instagram, he got a patent on their soil, and I had probably 5 or 6 bags of it before I started reusing it and re-amending it. And all 5 or 6 bags were, I'd say, pretty consistent and I really enjoyed it. So for the
I have a
price,
question.
it worked out well. Go ahead, Tal.
Have you guys ever tested the inputs? Like, I'm sure if it's a salt like 0052 or whatever, that would be consistent. But if there's a mix of, like
It's
a
not
mix of
consistent.
stuff,
That's just
it's
the low.
not.
When you see the NPK, that's just the lowest it can be. It can be
Okay.
higher. It can be higher than those numbers.
All right.
Those
'Cause,
are
like,
minimum
some-
percentage ranges.
Right. Like the doctor, I have some, where is it? Yeah, Dr. Earth has different products, just organic, but it has a whole bunch of different stuff in it. So even that's not going to be what it says on the label, is it?
I would assume
Oh,
no.
It would have those constituents in it, but as far as like the NPK ratios, I mean, it depends on how
Right.
exact you want to be. But I mean, it's going to be in the neighborhood. I'm just saying it's not going to be. It doesn't mean it's exactly what those
Yeah.
numbers.
Right. And they're probably not consistent from package to package either. So, right.
I think that when you start getting things from like large large companies, large agriculture companies that are down to earth, companies that are a little bit, more in the ag space, that you can find everywhere. I know that they test pretty consistently. But there's also, you can find links, I think, to some people that have done a bunch of testing on the inputs, just to see like where heavy metal levels are and other stuff. Because you'd be really surprised at the amount of arsenic and kelp products, and people like use a lot of kelp. And so that can be, if you're testing for heavy metals, if you're at a home grow, I mean, it's, not as big of a deal, but you're still smoking heavy metals. So it's kind of a big deal.
So,
Especially
yeah,
with growing medicine.
what do all you know about heavy metals? Like metal doesn't burn easily. Is it a different form when you go to smoke it? I mean, I always
Well,
wondered
usually
why
it's
everybody's
caught up.
Like,
It gets
it's an
sequestered into the
ion.
plant. Well, but it gets sequestered
Yeah.
into the plant, right? So the plants don't have like like they're not like thinking about it, right? It just passively gets. Well, but there's a lot of factors that go into this, and I am kind of oversimplifying, but
Are we really consuming it though when we smoke it? Does it burn the metal and it goes into our bodies?
well, it gets picked up because whatever tissues it lands in and whatever form it lands in, those elements are still, going to be getting into you. But like,
Yeah.
it's a question of, is it parts per million, parts per billion, parts per like.
I'll say
It
this.
also has to do like this. So let's say what happens to aluminum when it's heated up really hot. Okay,
True. That's
what I was just about to say.
Yes.
That's the real issue. Is like what chemical constituents are being released by the combustion.
Right. That's my question. Yeah. Do you guys know? Are we going to die? Am I dying
It's bad.
slowly because of, yeah, it's just bad. That's how much.
This
we
is
know.
one of the
Okay.
reasons that smoking things like causes cancer and other stuff like that, right?
Good point.
It is a lot of those other things that are either vaporized or aerosolized or just suspended within the smoke too.
Yeah.
You
it's
know-
very
you know,
different,
indoor
'cause, like,
air-
Eagle 20 you can eat, but you can't burn and smoke it. It will be deadly for you. So there's,
I mean, eating it would probably be still pretty bad, but there are some pesticides that are, like you're saying, kind of like the mode of the mode of how it gets into you is really important. Sulfur, for example, breathing it really, really bad
Really
for your
bad.
lungs.
But the
Getting it on
form
your
of-
skin, not so bad usually as much. Some people get more
Yeah.
irritated though.
I want to jump in and make a real quick comment. Bugs Z1 in live chat is saying heavy metals are not sequestered in the flour, and I can 100% backed up with lab testing prove that yes, in fact they are. So I just want to be serious about this because it is a health issue.
I'm curious
Well,
why
and-
people would think that is the case.
People want to believe that cannabis can do no wrong. I hate to say that sometimes. They just want to think, oh, it's only good. There's no way it could be bad, and it wouldn't take up something bad. But they're using it to pull up radiation.
Bioaccumulators.
They're using it to pull up radiation in Chernobyl, and they're
I want to smoke that.
That's a little bit different.
no, you're
Plus
right.
some Nukem High weed right there.
I mean, how,
Rearrange your genome with my new.
That'd be a
It's
nice
basically-
that'd be a nice opening to a new Marvel hero. Like
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
bioaccumulating something that's potentially harmful is the point that I was making. Whether it's a
It
heavy
cures
metal or
COVID,
whether
though.
it's nuclear radiation, both you don't want either of them in your products, right? So, but it's possible. So cannabis can possibly
So
bring up negative things.
If I may, though, there are a couple of things that growers can do to help mitigate heavy metals that might be present, and these are going to be amino acids. Glycine is actually, I think, the smallest amino acid complex, and it has a really strong binding capacity. So if they can bind metals into like larger groupings that are, they kind of perspire out and they're not biological. I also believe that their humic acids have this ability as well.
I'm not sure how that works personally, but I do think that like the just like nutrients, right? Making it more or less available for the plant. I guess there are some ways that you can make that sort of less possible, right?
Yeah, I have some research on it. Actually, I have a bunch of stuff on it.
I'm frantically looking through my notes too, because I know there's some microbes that help to sequester heavy metals. I think it was Bacillus subtilis, if I just going off memory. And then also,
do they like turn into like, do they like incorporate that with like a biofilm or something? Or
I'm not exactly. I'm trying to find. Let me find it. I don't want to just start guessing. I just tell you what I can remember off the top of my
I
head.
feel like I've read that too, though. I feel like I've read something about that as well.
That and humic and fulvics also help.
So it just makes it unavailable to the plant because it's not going to make it disappear, right?
No, yeah, it keeps it in puts it to a plant unavailable form. That's the best way to say it, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then like,
let me see. I have the white papers. I have a ton of them on amino acids.
I just want to shout out to Brandon for having tons of research papers just at his fingertips next to the computer. That's pretty good.
On paper, huh?
I'll have to find it, but I know that.
Shout out to Brandon Rust for sharing all of those things to us too. It's great. Thank you.
As soon as I find it, I'll share it in the group chat, or if I find it before then.
I have a good question actually. Spartan Grown, I believe, copied it over. And
Ascadian Grown says Glomus possibly. I don't know if it's Glomus intraradices or if I think it changed its name recently, but saying that it sequesters heavy metals, and that's a fungus. So
that's a good addition to the show. Thank you for adding that in and catching that in the chat. Somebody
rhizophagy intraradices.
Grunt Grown earlier asked, can a few organic growers review their watering practices or some pro tips on how to maintain ideal watering saturation on cannabis? And I would actually say that that's one of the things that a lot of new growers and even experienced growers, I personally feel, are overwatering or letting it get too dry or watering too much at a time. It's something that is hard to do perfectly because I think every plant's a little bit different. And one that I've heard basically all the organic growers say is you got to have some sort of like mulch, whether straw or a crop cover, or right now I'm using what's called a box, which has like a shower cap basically stretched over the top. And since I've started using it, I've actually been impressed by how much the water wicks up and goes over that like shower cap and keeps the top of the soil completely moist while there's only a tiny bit of water in the bottom of the reservoir. It's like a sub-irrigated planter. So there's water, fresh water always available in the bottom, and that wicks up to the top of the soil through basically like soil that acts as a wick. You pack it down harder in the corners and it just soaks up through the entire medium. So a lot of people like the blue mats and other things, but I think that one of the least expensive, least complicated options is just having a good mulch and keeping that water uniform throughout. But Spartan Grown, what do you think?
Oh, I was unmuted that whole time. I'm sorry if I was making noise. I think I'm just gonna tell you what I did. So that's obviously what I think is the best because, or at least for me, and that is I do the sub-irrigate like Jack was explaining, where you can get these SIP planters. I purchased mine at Home Depot. I think Lowe's and Meijer also in the garden sections sell them, and it's like a water resin underneath, and the plant. Well, I don't want to say it was the plant. It's really just the water pressure and how water moves through peat. But it wicks. It wicks up to the side, and keeps an even level of moisture in your soil. So it takes all the guesswork out. You just look down the tube, and if it's dry, you give it water. If it's got water, you don't water it that day. It made it really easy. You don't have to lift anything, you don't do anything. But if I didn't have those, then my next option would be just me, and maybe I'm old school. It's just the way I learned, and I would just lift pots. Get used to the weights of the pots. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. And don't let them get, if you're in an organic situation, don't let it get dry. It's not cocoa, you know, or even cocoa is even worse. I mean, cocoa's opposite of that. You don't want it to get ever dry, but peat, you want to just try to get that even moisture, like what you get with a sip system. You're trying to duplicate that. So water it enough to keep that even moisture level. There's a lot of things out there that can do that for you. Like you can dial in all kinds of these little watering systems, like Blue Mott's is a real popular one.
With the pots, like you were just talking about, I've seen people start to put like the clay pebbles in the bottom of the pot and then let it sit in the drip tray. So you basically get like a sip when you water from the top. Instead of sitting in runoff where the soil would be soaking, it's in a much more aerated state, so the roots can kind of like float down into where the tray space would be, and they soak that water back up, which I think is a good way to go about building it, especially if you have a larger pot. I loved the lifting the pot technique. I probably tended to let mine get a little bit drier than I should. And
I think as the pots get bigger, that kind of becomes not an option anymore. You know, obviously.
Yeah, if you want to get crazy, the dude from GML, I don't know if it's Uncle Reefer or Poops 420, but he's got a scale under every container, and he knows where he wants it. So once he waters it in, and then it gets down to a certain level, he knows it's time to hit him again. I had to when I was overwatering my entire cannabis career until about a month ago. Probably a little more than a month ago now. But yeah, you think. This was my thought in my soil organic thing. The major difference between my organics and hydro is that hydro has water all the time, but it doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. You need your soil. Yeah, it's different. That's all I'm going to say about that. But the one thing that I will say is that I've been using that infrared thermometer, and I had this discussion recently with somebody. And if you go around your room, your tent, whatever, at the same level, and like all the plants are reading, say 79 on the leaf surface, and there's one that's like 83, that one is going to be a dry plant, and you could use that as an indication as well. So,
and that's because it's pulling up the colder water from its roots, and if it's not being able to get any water, it's going to get hot.
I wanted to jump in just with a couple of thoughts. This isn't exactly my area, but I certainly have a lot of thoughts about watering. It's not just about, no matter what your media is, it's not just about the moisture levels. It's about the balance between the moisture and the air, the sort of oxygen that's available to the plant roots. So to remember that you're trying to sort of balance those two things. In a lot of situations, including in organic grows, the fertilization of the plant is also affected by how you water and how moist the media is. But yeah, so the other things like the size of the pots that you're using, sort of how much aeration you put in, whether the pots and other things are set up for good drainage, and then the basic media that you're using, all of that needs to be considered for sort of watering frequency, especially in a media that can become oversaturated with water. And when it's oversaturated, it's hypoxic, meaning there's not enough oxygen for the plant. And that's one of what we call overwatering is really a lack of oxygen in the root zone. So I just wanted to add some of those thoughts. I thought the rest of what you guys were saying was pretty.
I think that's an important distinction too, especially growers that are used to growing in, say, cocoa. You can correct a situation by water. Even if you have a heavy pot, you can correct that situation by putting fresh water through that. You're re-oxygenating the roots that way, but that's not an option really in a soil grow.
Yeah, and that's exactly why cocoa is easier for a lot of growers, because it gives you that you can always just sort of water again if you screw something up, or water more. Because cocoa, really, what's one of the selling points is it's not easily possible to sort of super saturate cocoa with water and squeeze all the oxygen out.
It also demystifies like why deep water culture works, you know, like
Exactly. If overwatering was actually overwatering, deep water culture wouldn't work, right? Because it's like always a lot of water. It's not the presence of a lot of water that's the problem. It's
Absolutely.
the lack
Lack
of
of
presence of
oxygen.
oxygen.
Yeah. So another thing, like I realized, is that as well as overwatering, my soil was probably, I was reusing soil, it got compacted and stuff. So when you add aeration, pumice or whatever, it definitely will help in your overwatering, and it'll add air in there. So if you
But that's
tend to
the-
have heavy, bed, add some aeration.
This is
My re-
remind.
my
This is
recommend-
reminding me. Go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Brandon.
My recommendation for people who want to build their own soil is to use around, for a living modified growing mix, is around 37 to 40% aeration. And I like, me personally, I like rice hulls and I like pumice, and I will do usually around 30% pumice and then 10% rice hulls in my aeration mix.
And if you can't
And-
find pumice, some lava rocks is kind of like a decent substitute. You can smash it up, put it in a bag and just smash the shit out of it if you can't find pumice. But pumice, I agree. I really like the pumice just because it's got all the micropores, right?
My buddy used Hydroton, and it's been working great for him. And I know it looks a little bit goofy, but he had it, and
It makes
it
sense. It's
provides
clay.
aeration.
That's
It's clay.
clay, full of
It's like a
minerals.
microbe holder. I think any aeration that's affordable and reasonable in your area, because like Tao was talking about with pumice, sometimes it can get expensive with shipping. So whatever you can get locally is often good. I've even
Plus,
wondered.
I was just going to say, if you're just going to use it once, you don't need to be getting crazy. You could just throw perlite in there if you're going to throw it in your backyard after, But
Don't do
I
that.
specifically went for pumice rock because
Can
I'm keeping it.
Can I just say something though? Here's the problem. If you go throw your used soil in your backyard, what's going to end up happening is after time, that perlite is going to float to the surface and then it's going to start blowing all over the place. And here's the thing. It's kind of like a pollutant, right? That stuff doesn't really break down very well, and it just kind of gets everywhere.
It just rocks, man. What's wrong with that?
It's easy ways to give yourself away as a cannabis grower. So I think most people don't want to put that flag on
It's
their
a security risk.
Honestly, it is a security. I hate to say it, but we are at a point where there are still red states. So that means cannabis's
So
value is
messy.
extremely high. So you don't want people to know that you're growing. In my opinion.
You like your peppers. You
So
grow a
raise-
lot of peppers.
Raised bed gardens. That's what I do. And
Yeah.
mulch. So
Yeah.
even if they do rise in the soil still, but the mulch keeps them down and they don't blow away.
I want to go back a little bit to the organic watering thing because I was previously growing in pots. I think that the fabric pots are preferable in my opinion because they provide more oxygen to the root zone, and it just I've always found compared to a plastic pot, when I pulled the root ball out, almost the entire medium would be filled with tiny little roots all over the place, and it almost was like a bowling ball. Like I could hit you over the head with it and it wouldn't break apart. But in my plastic pots, it was kind of stringy and they just weren't as healthy. So in my opinion, I think the fabric pots are a little bit
Only
probably better
in a
way to go.
home grow situation, I agree with you. But once you start getting large scale and you're multiplying that by hundreds or thousands, the labor that it's going to take to remove a plant from those, as opposed to the 10 seconds or less it takes to pop it out of a plastic pot, and the reusability of a plastic pot, how easy it is to clean as compared to those. I mean, you can throw them in a washer, but that takes time too, and water and power.
Yeah, potentially. I still think from a cheap home grow perspective, though.
Yeah, I said that's why I said at a
scale.
home situation, I agree, but at scale, it just starts to not make sense anymore.
Some pretty big farms I'm aware of use fabric pots, but it depends on a lot of things. It depends on your SOPs, right, and how you're sort of growing everything. I just wanted to chime in though. I don't think necessarily plastic versus fabric is the distinction that's important. It's pots that are designed for lateral aeration or pots that are not designed for lateral aeration. So like air pots
fabric pots
are made
are
out
plastic.
of plastic. Yeah, and there's other designs like that have aeration at the sides. They work equally as well as the fabric pots. In fact, I think maybe a little bit better. I've become a little bit sour on the fabric pots just because the fabric self-retains water right down at the bottom. And I think it kind of makes a slightly, or at least it can, depending on how you sort of set up your pots. But if you put them on anything that isn't like a plant riser, the fabric pot itself remains sort of super saturated. But yeah, there's setting up well. I agree with the point about pots, Jack.
I love the plant risers, by the way, for the fabric pots. I think having air underneath and all the way around the root zone is
Yep.
awesome. But the one thing I wanted to say was that most of the fabric pots are actually like plastic. It's like broken down, melted down plastic that they've formed into fabric pots, and they feel like
Yeah,
that's
they're the
fabric, but it's like
non-woven
poly.
fabric or whatever, the spun plastic. Yeah.
And I wanted to also give a shout out to Easy Swap pots because I use those still before I go into my earth box, and I love them. It makes transplanting really easy. They're a great quality fabric pot, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I don't have any discount codes, but I just actually love the product. I got the solo cup size and the 1 gallon size, and
I think MBGS will get you a discount out there at the Easy Swap Pots.
I tried it when I ordered mine, and it didn't work either time. So I used Abolished, and it worked.
I
But
say, yeah, hit up Abolish. He's got the codes.
so either way, if you could save a buck, at the end of the day, the second time I ordered, I didn't use any discount code because I respect them as a company and I wanted them to get the full price because I think their product is worth it. I really do believe in it, and it makes great root systems and easier transplanting. And it's a unique idea. They actually got a patent. They came up with something cool and different, and they're moving on into other pots that are used in different industries. But one of the things I wanted to say about going back all the way to the overwatering, underwatering conversation, once Dr. MJ sent me the link from the University of Guelph study about drought stress, I started experimenting with how long can I go without watering my plants? Like I'll water them heavy and then just let them go and wait until they start to droop. And it's way longer than most people would expect, depending on your pot size, depending on your plant size, how much light, heat, etc. It's not like a day or two. Sometimes it's like a week plus, depending on like when you transplant it in and things like that. So I learned a lot about how long.
How are
the
you
plant can go.
fertilizing that, Jack? That's the
I wasn't. I was just giving it water.
so in water only soil.
Yeah. So-
That would be a consideration. Yeah. So if you had left them, if you had been fertigating and just stopped fertigating, I think, I mean, that actually happened to me on this last grow because I flipped my pump off and didn't realize it for about 2 days. And yeah, the plants were pretty unhappy with me after that. But it depends. That's what I was always thinking about that Guelph study is that you'd have to prep them. You'd have to drop the EC in advance before you started the
Dry
drought
out,
stress.
yeah. Because you're causing too much osmotic.
They didn't
stress.
though. They just went back in with like a lower or normal EC until it balanced back out. They were using cocoa and they fed a specific nutrient. They had a control side. They did a true experiment, like an actual. It's 130 page. I've read every single page of it. Study the University of Guelph. If anybody wants it, I could DM you the links and the screenshots of like the droop angle that they.
Yeah,
used
I was
for the
gonna.
leaf.
That's my next question. Did you measure droop angle?
I actually go by like a percentage. So like if like we consider like this like a 0 and like praying is like a positive, I guess I would go into like what I'd consider like a negative 45 is what I'd roughly estimate theirs to be.
So,
Any
well,
lower than that. I
and
think
And the
it's
other
a bit
question I had:
dangerous.
did you notice a difference between the understory and the canopy?
Understory goes first,
Yeah.
almost always, but I would wait until I started to see stuff in the canopy going as well. It was usually, I check my plants twice a day at least. So once in the morning, once in the evening, and like at lights on and right before lights go out. And I would usually be able to tell by lifting the pot, like, oh, this could get watered right now, but I'll wait till tomorrow morning. Or like, oh shit, this really needs water like this second. So you sort of build that relationship with the plant depending on the pot size. And like I said, I was always surprised with how well developed and filled out the pots were with roots. And the other pot I used that I really liked was, it's called Rain Science grow bags. They use recycled wetsuit material. So it's like a sort of like rubberized, I don't know, spandex maybe? What do they use to make wetsuits? Does anybody know? Poly something? Regardless.
Polyurethane,
Yeah, it might be polyurethane. They're different now. I think depending on what year you bought it, it
like
might be a different
propylene.
material.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that product also, they came with an option of like putting little ringlets, like eyelet or circle holes with like a metal fitting. So you could like do LST easier and like tie your plants down. So I thought that was a cool option and they just look nice. So I used them for a few runs and they worked pretty well. So it's nice to see these little companies, and if it's affordable and good product, then might as well support it. Speaking of good product, I'm using some of Brandon's Bokashi Earthworks products. I just use some of the Micro Plus in my res for the sub-irrigated planter. Brandon, how did you go about coming up with that consortium of microbes for MicroPlus?
I didn't. There's a Japanese gentleman named Dr. Haiga. And in 1983, he was working with different sets of microorganisms, and he had an accident, and he mixed all his samples together, and he ended up throwing it out onto, my understanding is this is how the story goes anyway. He ended up throwing all his samples out in front of the research building that he was working at. And, within a matter of weeks, the spot where all those samples were was lush green vegetation there. And he was, the research that he initially was doing was on, nutrient cycling capacities of different bacteria. And then he figured out that it was the grouping of certain microorganisms together from different species that can coexist synergistically to improve efficacy of all species. And this consortium is known as effective microorganisms, and it is typically around like 7 to 9 species of bacillus bacteria, along with a purple non-sulfur bacteria, which is a really interesting type of bacteria because it has 4 different modes of metabolism, which is a really interesting thing because it can borrow electrons from inorganic and organic compounds. It can photosynthesize, and it can
I think it has chemoatrophy as well. I think that's the other one.
Yes. And then it also has the Saccharomyces. Usually it's a Cerevisiae or another one. And then usually there's typically one of 2 different types of purple non-sulfur bacteria, which is either the Pseudomonas pluostrius or the Pseudomonas. I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now. But it's that specific consortium. I've known about it for a really long time, and I was able to build a relationship with a woman who family owns a biotechnology company. And so I was able to source a wide variety of different types of microorganisms that they actually produce for agriculture, but they have a lot of them that are for agriculture. So what I do is I just go through white papers, and a lot of times the things that work generally across the board, across the board also work with cannabis, like the trichoderma, the bacillus subtilis, the effective microorganisms. And I know that cannabis, obviously, like most plants, have some specialized associations, but I'm not so much focusing on those, focusing more on these really, really hardy species that can dominate the soil microbiome and cycle nutrients, outcompete pathogens, and kind of produce these metabolites that are beneficial to the plants.
One I didn't hear you mention was that we often talk about is Beauveria bassiana, which I think is an awesome one. Matthew introduced me to it, and I think it's a very beneficial and interesting one. One thing Brandon was talking about, and I'm sort of blanking right now, I was going to throw it over to Matthew. He was talking about trichoderma, and that made me think of the fact that certain things that work for cannabis that work for other things are similar with pests. Like some pests are unique to cannabis, but many of them are pests to other crops. So a lot of the things that they use in agriculture that work on those pests also work very well in cannabis. And I wanted to just pass it over to Matthew if you have any thoughts about soil science, all this good stuff.
Well, you know me, Jack, I'm a big fan of the arthropods. Brandon did mention that there are some interesting aspects of certain bacteria and other microbes that have different modes of metabolization, which is really great, metabolism, I should say, which is a really awesome thing. Speaking of which, a lot of insects and mites have had interactions where some of these modes of metabolization, or even just breaking down certain compounds, like through glycolysis and other sorts of things, have been borrowed and put into arthropods, mites, and insects through horizontal gene transfer, which is a really, really neat thing. Not so much for us, but it does allow these. It's one of the things that allows some of these pests to be really resistant to the natural defenses of plants, either through the fact that they can just process various chemical compounds, or they can break certain bonds that typically only these sort of bacteria are able to do.
Or even just their life cycle being so fast. I mean, God, that sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of like in the same way that like if we were to put it on a sliding scale with like maybe viruses on one end and maybe like, I don't know, animals perhaps on the other, things that replicate or take a long period of time to replicate, or not, I'm sorry, things that replicate a ton, that can accrue mutations and they can go through the life cycle really quickly, so they can cycle issues, they can live out problems easily, and then they can make I guess you could say that when mutations do happen that happen to be beneficial, not detrimental or neutral, you just get more of those generations going. And so that's definitely helped arthropods for sure. But I did want to bring that up because I like that Brandon brought that up, because that is one of the things that make microbes so sort of vastly applicable, but also kind of hard to talk about generally because you have so many different kinds out there. You mentioned Beauveria bassiana. That's an entomopathogen that's associated with the soil. And actually the family that they're a part of, it's actually a cordyceps fungus. At least that's the last time I remember, but fungal taxonomy changes a lot. So
it is, to my knowledge, as well. That's whenever I look it up, they label it as that.
I'm
Is
pretty
Beauveria
sure.
bassiana, does it fruit? I would love to see it fruit out on a fucking bug. That would be awesome.
Oh yeah, it
can-
mycosizes. I have a few videos on my YouTube channel of mycosis by Beauveria bassiana.
Yeah.
Two-spot spider mite, which is not a
Yep.
typical organism that it's sort of like marketed for, but it does happen. It's all about spores on contact. And who knows, that might have been already dead. If I'm being completely honest, it could have been already dead when the mycosis occurred, which is a lot less impressive, right?
The interaction's cool nonetheless, in my opinion. I wanted to say, the American one, it's funny, I was reminded of a story that you told maybe on Fucking Talking Shit with Eagle a while back. That was kind of like Brandon's story where
Yeah.
the guy discovered the effective microorganisms, where you had like voodoo juice maybe or something when you were
Yep.
allegedly gorilla growing back in the day. Some spilled on like a spot of grass or something. You could tell the rest of this.
Yeah, it was I was, gonna mix up some stuff in the middle of the woods out there, and when I opened up the voodoo juice, I spilled like half of it out. I knocked it over actually. And then I did what I had to do. But when I came back a week later, it was in like the native vegetation of the area. When I came back later, that spot was so lush and green, I could not believe what a difference it had made. And that's when I started taking probiotics, like for myself. I tell this story too, like when I first started growing, I was using powdered nutrients and the plants did good. So I take a 1-a-day vitamin and I take probiotics, not every day, but on a regular basis. I believe in them both because I see what they did to my plants. So I got a question for Brandon. So I apply all these microbes and stuff to my plants, or foliar spray, whatever. They'll survive, but people continually add more. Is it beneficial, or I'm sure it won't be detrimental, or it could be actually? What's your take?
So this is one of the things I actually wanted to touch on. When we talk about like inoculating different types of microorganisms, you have to remember that environment plays a big factor in their efficacy. Beauveria bassiana, when you apply that as a foliar or in soil, if you really want it to have the greatest efficacy, you want to have really humid rooms. So if you spray it like right before your lights go off, or you water into your soil right before your lights go off, when you know it's going to be the most humid, that you're going to get more out of any type of biological agent, because they like warmer, humid conditions. Like if you were going to culture a lot of these bacterias and these fungi in mycology or bacterial incubators, you have them set to certain temperature and humidity where they grow at their best rate. And so some of these are things that you might want to take into consideration while you're trying to inoculate.
I definitely agree with that. One of the reasons why I brought up the Bouveria bassiana cordyceps lineage is because they originally they infected arthropod um, hosts. That was their first thing that they were good at, and I always bring this up. But then they transitioned to being able to exist inside of plants, specifically grasses, and this is true for various lineages in the cordyceps, in the Cordyceps, which is significant because, like you said, Brandon, the environment's really important. Sometimes the plant is itself the environment, which is kind of neat and has some interesting implications. We were also talking about heavy metal sequestration in plants and sort of things like this. This is a colonization too. But with cannabis research specifically, I think there's pretty much no research that I'm familiar with Bouveria. And I like to see a little bit more of that. But endophytes in general, some of these things are going to have effects that are more demonstrably beneficial or seemingly so, whereas other effects maybe have to happen in unison or with other microbial interaction, and it can be very hard to like track this sort of a thing.
You know what else?
Probably do the experiment, Matt, at the facility, because we have mycology incubators. I have agar dishes. It would really just be a matter of inoculating a plant, and then after X amount of days, do controls, after 3 days, after 5 days, after 7 days, are we still seeing, and you have to sterilize the outside of the tissue, right? And then see if you can culture that Bouveria bassiana from the inside of that plant.
Well, yeah, like proving. So my understanding from the research I've read about endophytism and Bouveria, like with corn, for example, is that the really difficult part, the part that I think would be that turns this from an easy task to a difficult task, is proving through like you're mentioning surface sterilization, but also proving that it actually colonized the interior tissue.
Yeah.
That's kind of a challenging thing to do.
Yeah.
Brandon, we have a question from chat. Do you culture your own EM1, or do you buy pieces and put it together? And yeah.
Okay, so for the Micro Plus, I manufacture that here. And then the spore concentrate is what it's made from. So I also sell the spore concentrate, where you could take that and make your own, liquid concentrate.
Okay.
It's just, and the reason I offer both of them is because if you're a farm, like of any size, this is a product that if you make 5 gallons of liquid concentrate, a home grower, that is going to last so long, right? And the thing is, it has a storage life of 3-4 years. That stuff's not going to go bad as long as you keep it in a nice, cool area that's not, exposed to fluctuating conditions. It's going to last a really long time. These things create endospores. So what happens is they feed on all the carbohydrate, which is the molasses. They replicate themselves, and then once they run out of food, they shrink themselves down into little DNA spores, and then they're in solution. They're suspended in solution until they come in contact with a food source, which is going to be, pretty much any hydrocarbon compound, any type of organic compound, even. And here's about the EM, because of the consortium, they can sequester inorganic compounds too. That can also be used for bioremediation, for toxic toxin remediation. It's been used for sewage. It has a wide range of uses. Agriculture is a huge one, but they use it also for like animal livestock, for increasing the beneficial microorganisms, because it's a probiotic, and they use that to increase the, give health benefits to livestock. Again, it's used for solid state fermentation. It's used for in a lot of agricultural runoff, where they'll treat manure runoff, agriculture waste runoff.
Right. To just back up a second, I just wanted to add in when Brandon was saying how, you needed a humid, relatively warm area for fungus to thrive. When you release beneficial bugs, they need the proper ranges too to survive and be effective. So
Spartan's got a good sheet.
This is true. Yeah.
Spartan's got a nice little like fact sheet over there. I think if I remember, once upon a time on a show, he was like, "Oh yeah, this one's good from like 40 to 70," and then I think it was from Nature's Good Guys or something like that. But there's different ranges for different bugs. I'll say that.
Yeah, but sorry, that hash bowl blew my fucking mind and it erased everything. So you have to tell me what we're talking about. I did it sitting right in front of me. If you have a question about the temperature range, I can tell you the bug.
So I would just want to interject here as the resident IPM specialist and say that the way that I always try to remember it is that sort of insects and other arthropods used to be aquatic, and they've had to retain all that moisture, and then an exoskeleton, they can do that. And the smaller you are, the harder it is to do that, the more severe the lack of humidity is typically going to affect you, especially mites. But yeah, Swirsky, give us a Swirsky and Cucumeris comparison from that chart. And where's that chart from?
Jack was correct. It's Nature's Good Guys. So it's Swirsky and Cucumeris. Here we go. So it's the Cucumeris, the temperature range is a little bit wider. So they've got a 43 to 90, and I'm talking in Fahrenheit degrees. Whereas the Swirsky is a little bit, it's the same as on the high end at 90 degrees, but it's a little bit warmer on the low end at 50 degrees. Yeah. And then the humidity is even bigger difference. It really, if you're looking at just temperature range alone, the Swirsky, which is the ones I tend to use.
And what about the
Phytocilius persimilis.
Yes.
So persimilis is similar to the temperature range of the Cucumeris, the 43 to 90.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But so the humidity ranges though on the Swirsky and the Cucumeris is the Cucumeris has got it's fairly high. So not really. It's really tight. I guess I should say it's only 65 to 75%. I think that's a ridiculously tight range.
It's pretty tight, yeah.
I've certainly had it successful before, like in different ranges, but I bet this is probably optimal.
Right. Yeah.
And for that culture particularly.
We still use Cucumeris.
So what does it say for Swirsky on that RH chart?
So that's way better. It's 40 to 90, so it's like way better for our ranges. I mean, if it's
that's awesome,
we're never going to be out of that range. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing.
And it's one of the reasons why I use the Swirsky breeding sachets in the greenhouse, because they're just, you can open those things up.
Great
you
generalist.
Can open them up after weeks, and you can still see movement in there. Things are going on, so it makes me happy. But one of the things that I've seen, have you guys seen this? Okay, my Rove beetles get into those sachets, and they have like a heyday, like they're partying in there.
They're crawling up. They probably like food. Those mold mice, and there are mice in there that they would feed on.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if they're eating any of the Swirsky. I'm sure they would be, because, I mean, they're not that...
probably.
I mean, they're about the same size.
A non-zero amount anyways. They're probably a harder target. The mold mites are pretty slow and sort of helpless, especially to like a Rove beetle. At that weight class, Rove beetles are like apex predators.
They're like a Tyrannosaurus Rex just fucking mowing down. Man.
They really are.
It's like a lawnmower just plowing through that sachet.
Yeah. I should probably get some Rove beetles then, because I always have tons of mold mites, because I'm sure that's where they're coming from, is the damn fucking they stick them in those sachets just to feed the fucking mites. But
it's true.
I got so many.
One of the things too is like when you're doing like organics and soils, you always want to go with like multiple modes for your IPM. So
I've been going nematodes in soil.
So Beauveria bassiana and nematodes work really well. The Azomax or I don't really advocate so much for neem oil, but they do work really well in conjunction with each other, like the Azomax and like PFR 97 combo, or Azomax Beauveria bassiana.
Instead of neem, we like Suff oil. That's what I like to use.
Or Suff Oil X. I have that.
It's fucking disgusting shit.
Oh, dude, it smells so bad, dude. It's just like...
It comes out so thick. It's like, can you not cut this with any fucking water? What are you doing? It's like fucking almost toothpaste.
It's pretty nasty. I mean, are you guys using it pretty regularly for your veg or what?
Just veg, yeah. We'll use it not
Yeah.
regularly, but we do a rotation, right? So we have like a 4-product rotation. So I just hate when we have to go through and use that shit.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I bought some for the facility because it's always good to have rotating products, like you said. And multiple modes of action are always more effective because it makes everything else more effective. And one of the things that I see is if you have something that affects an insect's, nervous system, and it slows those things down, they're an easier target for nematodes or the fungus, or they
One of
become
the-
more susceptible to.
One of the things I was just reading, I love that you brought that up. Sorry to interrupt, but one of the things I was just reading about this actually is that the fact of sublethal stressors, like for example, pyrethrins. Pyrethrins will affect most insects as a general rule, but some of them can deal with it better than others. And if it's a low enough dose, it definitely won't be problematic for them. It'll be a temporary issue.
Yeah.
But there's tons of viruses and other pathogens that are out there in the wild in native populations. And just putting them under a lot of duress and stress will make some of these things really, really much more prominent and lethal for them. I only know this because I was looking at some interesting research about viruses in arthropods in general and insects, and also specifically baculoviruses that are in parasitoid wasps. So sorry, I just wanted to bring that up, I guess.
Is it a common
Yeah, no,
strategy
I-
to use like a virus as a basically IPM agent, or is that going to be something that we see in the future? Or if we
I
figure
think
out
we'll
like,
see more of it in the future. We have mostly seen it with caterpillars, and they're usually very specific to the species, or at the very least, maybe the family or genus. The problem, they're hyper-specific, so that is really great because that means they'll only affect a certain group. But they have a lot of the same problems of other microbial biopesticides, which is that it's usually passive. You usually have to apply it really often, usually a high price point, especially for virus production. And keeping it stable for a long period of time is sort of difficult. It's one of the things that make viruses in general kind of not a problem in some cases, that they don't live very well outside their host unless they're super thermostable or something.
That's interesting. We have a question from the chat from Ready to Hit Hot Fire about this is an interesting question, and I think Matthew can take it first, but I have a thought on it. They said, what do you do with your predator bugs when they're done doing their job to get rid of them without hurting them? And what I'd say is one of the jars of cannabis that I received this year from a legal producer, because they can't use a lot of the pesticides and sprays in California, I was scoping it because one of them, even though it passed mold testing, had mold on it. So now I check every single bud before I grind it up. And I found what I believe to be either, I can't remember if it was Californicus or Persimolis. It was like a little red predator mite, very clearly. Like I'd seen them, I've used them in the past. And I just found that interesting. I actually talked to a guy who worked for that company, and I was like, hey, I saw that you guys had this. And it just got stuck in the trichomes. Like it got stuck in the bud. So
That
I guess
happens.
rather smoke that than some of the harmful pesticides and things like that are out there. But yeah, that was the fate for that one. But I'll pass it over to Matthew and see if he has any thoughts.
Two things. One, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, Brandon, so I want to really hear more about what you were talking about. I'll try to be brief. Two, with regards to the biocontrols and the predatory mites, I don't do anything. This may be a bit of a surprise for some people, and some people get a little bit squeaky about this, and I totally understand. And yeah, like Jack says, there's a justification that like, well, it's a lot better than getting other sort of adulterants into your product. But yeah, I don't really do anything for it. I will say that's important to do your quality control though at the commercial level. Probably the biggest two things that I hear about most recently that come to my mind that's more uncommon, but is getting more common that people don't notice usually, is hoverfly larvae in their pupa, their puparia. So the hoverflies, a lot of their larvae will feed on aphids. And so it kind of is another way of also learning that maybe they had an aphid infestation as well. But then the larvae are kind of mobile, but they're like green or brown. So they kind of blend in really well with drying cannabis. And then what they'll do is if there's no food or they've gotten big enough, they'll kind of pupate up in the inflorescence sometimes. Another one is the rove beetles. When they fly, they might get stuck in the bud, and it's kind of a conspicuous looking beetle, so it's a lot easier to kind of notice than like a small mite or something like this. But when the mice don't find food, I mean, first of all, they don't like to be around inflorescence and the glandular trichomes, but second of all, if they don't find food, they'll just try to search somewhere else, and eventually they die of starvation, which is the kind of the truth of it, unless they can eat like pollen or yeast or something like this. Okay, Brandon.
Well, before I want to add one thing, and it was what you just kind of said at the very end there is like, if you're really concerned about them, especially predator mites, you can grow a banker plant or, a plant that like a flowering pepper, like the explosive embers, and that's going to provide a pollen. It's going to provide a food source for those. So if they wander in that direction, they actually prefer the pollen to its bug prey sometimes.
It's true. They get to chow down.
Is it certain ones do like it, but I think there are some out there that actually don't feed on pollen, unfortunately. But
That's
a lot of
true.
them do feed on pollen.
You know what's really, really great though, is that some of the best ones, some of the ones that have the best temp and humidity range, generalist predator, Matt's all-time favorite predator mite, Amblia swirsky. It does feed on pollen.
Those things go to work.
Do you think it could,
That is true.
what if you had a male plant? Do you think it could feed on a male?
Absolutely.
Cannabis male pollen?
I
Yeah.
suspect
I know it
so.
can.
I suspect so.
I know
suspect
so.
I've
I know
got
so.
Yeah, you had that experience, you said.
Yeah, somebody was reversing their plant, and it was a female plant. It might have even been Kyle Breeder, actually, because you're one of the few people that I talk with that actually reverses and does feminized breeding. But when it was actually Adam from 2020 Mendocino, he was using Swirsky's as his IPM, and he was getting very few seeds or no seeds when he was doing his feminized crosses, and he couldn't figure it out. And then he realized his Swirsky's were eating the pollen from his reversed female plant because they produce very little pollen. For those who don't know, Kyle could probably tell us about that. But yeah, when you reverse a plant, it produces like low to no pollen anyway. So when you have a predator that would like to eat that pollen, it just swallowed it up before it could even get to the females. It would eat it while it was in the male pollen sac.
Do you have pictures?
I would love to get more pictures and footage of that. Not
Yeah.
because I don't believe it or anything like that, but because it'd be great
It'd
footage.
be cool.
All
Yeah.
right, so I
So
got
I-
a male. I got
I-
a male cuvee shooting his fucking wad all over my fucking mother tent right now.
Excellent.
And I have a living cocoa autoflower, one female going right now, so she's probably going to get pollinated. But I have a saucer sitting there with. I take all of my sachets when I harvest the plant, and I just throw them in that saucer because those living soil beds never move. They never get, they get toppings and shit, but they don't ever come out of there. So if anything's left in there, they're going to go live in there, right? So I can bring my camera, my macro lens, and see if I can shake pollen over it all day long. And
That would be awesome. I would love to see that.
I-
Yeah,
I
no,
think
it'd be
living-
great. It'd be great observational footage for reference.
Literally for science, like that would benefit, I think, the scientific community at large for us to have that type of footage and in general.
Absolutely. It's people like you, Spartan. It's other people who like Aaron the grower, who helped me with the Stickcephala, the buffalo tree hoppers on cannabis. Like people videotaping these things. I'm sure people are not surprised when I say this. There's tons of species like insects and other things that we're learning about because people are like putting them up on the internet, being like, "What's this?" And actual experts will go like, "Huh, I've actually never seen exactly those petals before." Where and
I wonder
leads
if that could be used to eliminate, the potential for males in commercial like hemp crops to pollinate the females. That would
That would take a lot of
interesting-
bugs.
The cost, here's the problem with that, is they've already figured out how to make unpollinatable females. Both Breeder Steve and Oregon CBD have made females that cannot receive pollen. And there's a few words. I think it's parthenocarpy and sthenocarpy, but then also I believe trifoliate. There's a few different avenues of making non-pollinatable females, but they're putting them out there, and it seems to be that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, I've been waiting for that to be a thing for a while. There's a couple of different routes to sort of genetically make sterile females. And it's almost a little bit absurd that we're caught growing a crop that we have to genetically isolate or sort of isolate by sex.
Well, yeah, it's definitely going to be a thing in the near future. I'll say that.
It is unique, right? Because we're feeding on the pre-reproductive parts and not the post-reproductive parts, which is usually the latter, right?
Well, they do. We
that's
do
part
that
of it.
too. They eat hemp seed. Just to point that out.
A lot
That's
of
true.
fruits are grown like this, though, Matt. Like if you think about seedless oranges or whatever, I mean,
Well, that's true too. That's true.
yeah,
too.
what you want is the pulp of the fruit. You don't necessarily want the seeds. What we want is the flowers. We don't necessarily want the seeds. But I guarantee you, they don't make seedless oranges by like removing all the male flowers
Right.
from the orchard. They do it by having females that don't produce seeds, female flowers that don't produce seeds. And there's a couple of different sort of genetic paths to go down to sort of promote that kind of behavior. And yeah, it just needs to be done in cannabis. It's cool to hear that they are working on some of those paths, Jack.
For somebody who wants to do it on the home breeder front, one of the paths that was shared publicly by Breeder Steve was he self-to-plant twice and taking it S1, like, reversing it, pollinating itself, getting the S1 generation, and then selfing it again. I don't know if he was back crossing it or S2ing. I think he said at the S2 generation, 50% of them were unable to accept pollen. What he was trying to do was make that happen from seed at 100%, which he was having difficulty for a while, but he said he found some other way to make it happen. He didn't even want like the one way. I think some of the stuff that's marketed as seedless, like seedless watermelon, they actually have small, like premature seeds. And I think that's the Stethanocarpy, but Parthenocarpy is where they actually like cannot receive pollen at all. So there won't be any seeds, like truly 100%.
The other problem with this often is that it's very difficult to then produce seeds for these varieties.
And it's hard to keep it going. It has to be clonally
Well,
reproduced.
they're bred to not produce seeds. So then, like, how do you get them to make seeds when you want the seeds?
So
Right?
it's great for
Good
licensing.
old radioactivity, probably. No.
He said
Well,
that they actually
no.
root.
They
must
do
be
vegetative propagation oftentimes.
Or-
So
They root in 3
seedless
days.
oranges are not grown out from seed. Like I don't
Dude,
think very
If
often
you keep
ever.
the
Maybe.
parents, so if you keep the parents of the ones that made the seedless shit, it's gonna do it again and again and again. Keep those clones, right? Or
Yeah,
those
so-
seeds.
Well, that plant may have only produced one seed. That's what
is that
happens
how it
with
works?
seedless
Okay,
oranges.
yeah.
Finding the seeds
I'm
is
not-
incredibly rare. When you find
Okay.
one, you plant it, and then you got a new line of seedless oranges. But it's not that they never produce seeds. It's just that the
Okay.
seeds are incredibly rare. So they don't grow seedless oranges from seeds. They take vegetative propagation
Right.
to plant most of those trees because the seeds are so rare.
I got
So there's
think
these
that's-
obstacles to sort
I
of
was
creating a seed
unaware.
market for seedless varieties.
Right.
I
But if
think
they
that's how-
locked,
process.
what if they locked? I'm sure this would take a lot of engineering, probably. But what if they locked sort of the production of the right reproductive parts behind some sort of like trigger, like maybe exposure to extreme cold or extreme heat or something?
Are you thinking about doing this with CRISPR or with traditional breeding techniques? Matt?
I mean, yeah, it probably would be a long time and possibly never happen the latter way. But like, yeah, I was just thinking like something to do, some way to like, because some plants have developed these ways naturally, right, to like beat out certain seasonal problems or something like that. But
You
I'm
could do
just
anything with
speculating.
CRISPR.
that's
One-
yeah.
One benefit that Breeder Steve shared when he did get the unpollinatable female, he said, and maybe this is a speculation, but because it couldn't be have reproduction happen that way, they cloned faster than any plant he'd ever had, which was 3 days to root. Most stuff at like 5 days is super early. 7 to 14 is like average. 21 on a really, really slow rooter, or if your situation's not dialed in
Or you
quite.
could propagate a bunch of mothers really quick and then just kick out the clones like nothing.
Yep, they are like perfect for nursery type, that asexual reproduction, I guess, method of getting the genetics out there.
Jack, I'm not sure if you're interested or not, but a little while ago, Cheddar Bob in chat was interested in doing a giveaway. He was offering up Black Triangle F2 Open Pollination Outdoor 2018 at the 46.5 north latitude. Said come up with a question or something, and then he'd be happy to send it off to somebody. But I wanted to let you know, that's not my call.
I definitely think we can do that because I've seen a bunch of other people do giveaways, but they would have to take all accountability and responsibility for shipping and anything on the back end. So if whoever wins doesn't get it, it'd be on the person who's offering it up. You said it, Cheddar Bob, I believe. I see them pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Cheddar Bob 13 also has a question about Bavaria Bassiana, so I'm interested in hearing that too.
So since they're going to do a giveaway, you can actually answer their question first, and then we'll do their giveaway.
I think that's fair.
What is the question?
Have at it.
Hey,
Wait,
you know
before
what
we
I
get
think?
into it, I wanted to say one last thing. Fuck, I almost forgot. I think Oregon CBD found theirs with like a very rare one, like Dr. MJ Coco was talking about, and they've been breeding with it. And I actually lost the rest of my thought on that. And I wanted to mention the rooting faster, but I already said that, so I didn't forget.
One thing I want to bring up too before I forget is a way. I don't. It might have been 3 or 4 episodes ago. We were promised to bring a person up on chat.
Yes,
We never got to that, so that's something I'd like to get back to one of these times.
definitely. I was thinking about that today.
And while we're talking about chat, I don't know what this is about, but I am Groot.
I love it, Tao. So I wanted to give Matthew an opportunity to answer the question about Bavaria Bassiana, and then we could do. I'm not going to do a question. I think it'll be more fun to just do a number, and we'll do 1 to 500 because we got 150 in chat, and whoever is the closest will win it that way. And you'll have like a minute and 30 seconds to get it. So, Matthew, go ahead, take it away with the question.
You can make my eyes work hard.
Is the question? Oh, the question isn't in chat, is it? Where is it?
Oh, I thought you already saw it. Shit.
No, he mentioned
Well,
that
they
just mentioned he had
they-
a question. He didn't really get into it.
Yeah, because they never mentioned it yet, or maybe it's in chat now.
All right, so go ahead, Cheddar Bob. Write that question out that you have for Matthew about the thing. But the one thing I wanted to say, this is a good rule from fucking talking shit with Eagles giveaways. He's given away like thousands of seeds this year. It's amazing. So shout out to that guy, Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram. He's a good dude. But they would do 1 guess only per person. And if you see your number, that's the only way you can guess twice. So if like you guess 333 and 333 is already guessed, then you can pick a different number. But otherwise, you only get 1 guess. Otherwise, like if you guess twice, we have to unfortunately disqualify you because it makes it unfair. Because if I guess 40 times and the person only guesses once, it gets way less opportunity. So keep it to 1 guess. Make it
So
fair.
I guess Cheddar Bob 13's question is other possible cordyceps for cannabis. So doing a little bit of a test for myself here, just making sure this is true.
That's good, Brandon. What is that?
While you
but-
were looking for that, Brandon, showing us a nug.
Yeah. I wish I could get a better view of it. I wish the camera could zoom.
It's doing a pretty decent job right there. But
You
what
can get
are
a
we looking
good
at?
sour cheeseberry.
Oh, nice.
It's delicious. I love this stuff. This is like one of my favorites right now. It's got like it's really interesting. It's got the highest terpene, almost at 2%, is delta 3 carine followed by ocimene. So it's interesting. It's got a really interesting flavor profile.
So it looks like,
Was there a number picked already? There's numbers already going up in chat.
yeah.
Oh, so sorry. We're gonna say start. When I say start, I'll start a timer. So that none of those numbers count. Disregard all those guesses. It
All
hasn't.
right, I'm
the
gonna
giveaway has
put a
not
marker.
begun yet.
I'm gonna put a marker. Are we starting now?
It's when I do start in
What's the
chat with
question?
the Cheap
Okay.
Home Grow.
Wow,
There's no
it's good to see
question.
a whole bunch of
Oh.
people that are listening that don't participate in chat, putting in numbers. But shout out to all of you guys.
All the people lurking. We got 171 tonight. So cheers to everyone here. That's a pretty good number. Respect to
So-
all of you. Thanks for Cheddar Bob for the giveaway.
So I can answer the question sort of briefly.
I just hit start. So when he's done with the question, you can put in your answers right now. Your
Okay,
numbers.
so the answer is actually a fundamentally easy one. There are a couple of different cordyceps, and the taxonomy for cordyceps will change, and so you might even find more fungi that you're familiar with other groups that are actually in fact cordyceps, especially ones that infect insects and other arthropods. You already know Buffaria, but those that are commercially available, Iseria fumosoracea, I was right. Is actually
497, right?
exactly. So the active microbe that people think for PFR97. that fungus is also a cordyceps fungus as well. And I think they're actually quite a bit related to their Beauveria, which is also commercially available fungus as well. Yeah, and also fun fact, cicadas and also certain leafhoppers and tree hoppers and other things like that have formed symbiotic relationships, scale insects too, with cordyceps fungi. You know, the same things that we think of that normally infect and kill insects. Well, apparently they've even taken over the roles that bacteria often do for these insects, which is to process some of the compounds they get so they can have food and amino acids. And basically, if those were not in their system, they would perish. They would not be able to exist. So those symbiotic relationships have developed. And I just wanted to say that's a really neat tidbit and to know. There is no hard and fast rule.
Too. It's a good example too of, you know, microorganisms' ability to evolve into a synergistic relationship. And
Absolutely.
maybe also remind the viewers that the reverse can also happen.
That's true. On the long line of symbiosis, you've got parasitism on one side and mutualism on the other, and parasitism can become a mutualism and vice versa.
I wanted to say congratulations to Mountain Skies or Mountain Sky S because they hit the nail on the head. The number was 1 and they guessed 1. So when it's 1 through 500, sometimes it's actually just 1. So cheers to you. Get in touch with Cheddar Bob 13 and they will get you a pack of, was it Black Triangle F2?
I don't know, but I want to shout out a name in chat that I saw, Stony like baloney, and the Stony's spelled like baloney. I think that's so cool. Yeah, shout out.
Hey, since we're doing giveaways, maybe I can go dig something out to give away too. I'll be right
I'm
back.
down with that.
Now we're talking. I'm dropping out. I'm gonna be in chat, guys.
As long as you're not like that one episode with Eagle, there was like, it was open to anyone. And then the person literally dropped out like right as the giveaway happened and then like guessed before start even happened and then guessed the first one right when start happened and it was the exact number both times. So it's like, And then they ended up saying, I'm going to give it away to somebody else. I think they realized.
I want to shout out Cheddar Bob again, just randomly out of chat, offering that up. Big ups to you, man. That's awesome. I know we didn't ask the question like you'd asked for a question. Sorry about that, but still big.
That's my bad.
Bit of a communication kerfluffle, but I'm glad that goodness was dispensed.
I'm glad he got to ask a question because I was too high at the time from the several bong rips right before to think of a good question. So I was like 1 to 500. They'll have fun. It's chat interaction. You'll get to see who's here because these people want the seeds. People love seeds. It's where your garden starts. At the end of the day, I mean, it all started from a seed.
Cheddar Bob also says that they're happy to be on the panel sometime. So we might want to consider that.
Do you have Zoom? Because Spartan's about to jump off. So maybe you can jump on in the last 15 minutes after Brandon's giveaway.
Here,
Yeah,
I got.
We can
So
take
this
from
is
each
what
other.
I'll do. I'm going to give away a pack of these TKNL5 Haze times Lime 1 BX and these Gorilla Glue 4 reverse back across times Lime 1 BX, which haven't been released yet. And they come with little stickers.
All right, so I'll be in the chat with Tao.
Is that all one?
I'm gonna log off, guys. It's been fun.
Is that all one giveaway, Brandon? You getting both
Just-
together or 2 separate giveaways? What are you doing
Both
there?
together.
That's
Okay.
oh, wow. It just got sweeter, didn't it?
Now I'm really dropping out.
Okay, yeah, no.
So how does it work? Will I just do a random number on my phone or something like that?
Do you want to ask a question? You could do a trivia question, or you could do a number, 1 to like 500 or something like that.
Okay.
Surprise cheap
I know.
homegrown
I have a
drops
good
over here.
question.
Just
I think
too,
you just dropped a
think
good
what-
one about.
Just think
I
of
think it was
remember
like-
Google is out there, so try to do something that will foil Google.
I also wanted to say you just made a really great post that had like a slideshow, and if you asked a question that was from that slideshow,
That was really good too. That was a great.
Yeah,
one.
but then there's a lot of people.
Photosynthesis
There's
one?
a lot of people in the chat. I think we should just make it fair and do a random number.
Mhm.
sounds good.
Yeah, because someone might have quicker internet. Would that play into how quickly? they can get
Absolutely, yeah. And some
Yeah,
people were saying in the
so,
chat
okay.
that they were getting lagging, and you know
Yeah,
everyone's
so-
connection's different.
So what
let's
I'll
keep it
do
fair.
is I'll
Yes,
do the
true.
random generator on my phone and I'll wait until everybody's selected their number. Everybody just pick one number, and
One
then
number?
I'll
Oh, man,
show
please.
it on, and then I'll show it on the screen.
That's
Just have it-
perfect.
Just select the number on there, then type it in our chat what the number is, so we can watch the screen. That way we don't have to scroll through 100 things back to see who got it. We can actually, as it's going, try to catch the number.
One guess only.
He's
One
gonna
guess
do it
only.
after. He's gonna
Okay,
pick the
what should
number
I do?
after.
What 1 through what? 1 through 150?
500.
Everybody's already
Through
picked.
500?
So
Okay.
we're not.
1
we're
through
not started.
500.
1 through 500.
Are we started now? Because there's a billion.
I hit
numbers.
start. Yeah, hit start in the chat.
Okay.
One guess only, unless you see your guess already chosen, and then you can guess
I already
twice.
put it in the chat.
All right, I see it.
The number is in the chat.
There's a lot more people on here than we normally see in chat.
That's
Funny
what I
how
was
that
saying
works.
earlier.
645 with the Red State Rebels. I like your enthusiasm, but it's 1 through 500.
I always do that when I like,
Enthusiastic.
I don't actually want the seeds, but I just want to participate as like a joke. Like it'd be like 1 to 4 or 1 to 500. So instead of doing like 420, I'd do like 710 because like maybe I already have those seeds from Brandon. I don't in this case, but I'm happy for whoever's going to win them. That's why I'm not participating because I already know the answer to this question. We're gonna wait another 10 seconds and then I'm gonna hit stop in the chat.
Ooh, there's a close one.
Another
I've
10.
seen at least 3 people pick 420, guys. I think that if you did, you might want to pick another number.
Some sound advice right there. I've seen several close, but I haven't seen the number yet.
All right, and they're stopping.
I hit stop. So did anybody see the number was 321? So whoever was closest to 321 will scroll back through the live chat and figure it out.
I saw some like 320 and then some 317s.
Yeah, just tell me who it is. I'll write their address right now on this envelope and send.
I don't think
out
anybody's
tomorrow.
closer than the 317 that I saw.
I see a 333, but that's definitely not closer. 317 would definitely be it. Who was the 317?
Nicholas Watts.
I think that is the closest, yes.
$328? No.
360.
Oh.
Lucky guy.
Vero
There's
HTX.
just
is
one
at
Velo.
316. Yeah, poor kid.
Alrighty. Well, hey, congratulations. Make sure
So,
you DM Brandon.
me
or-
at either DM me if you follow me on IG, or email me at
Well, there was a 320,
Bokashi.
328.
Yeah, that's not closer.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's still 7.
Or you can email me at bokashiearthworks.com or at bokashiearthworks@gmail.com.
That gives us a good opportunity to allow Spartan Grown to jump out and hit the bathroom, play with his dogs, let him out if they need to. I know he's going to go jump onto this Michigan Bros Grow Show this evening. If you guys are doing it this evening, I believe you are. So, Spartan, final thoughts and shout-outs.
Oh, I just wanted to, shout out you guys coming. I love the consistency. You know what I mean? We're here every single week, right? We don't miss. A panel member here and there, but I mean, we're still doing this thing. So I'm proud of us. And shout out to Chad. This was a really cool show because we got to hook up Chat, man. That just makes my heart smile. So I'm leaving here with a smile on my face. Thanks for that. Thanks everybody. And hey, check me out. I'll be on the Grow Show after this. So hopefully we'll keep the smiles coming.
Awesome, man.
See you
Peace
next
out,
week,
Spartan.
Spartan.
You can find him on Instagram at Spartan Grown or email him at Spartan Grown. He can also be seen on the Grandmaster Level Show on Friday nights and Michigan Bros Grow Show in about 17 minutes. So big shout out to him. Always appreciate Spartan. He's got a great attitude. He's a very qualified and amazing person and grower. So we're happy to have him on this panel always. So thank you to Brandon for giving away the seeds. That was very generous of you. When my F3s are ready of the Velvet Punch that I'm making right now, I'll probably do some giveaways when they're germination tested and sent out to the testers. So that'll be a fun time. But I had my thought was Cheddar Bob, DM me on Instagram at Jack Greenstock, and I could get you the Zoom link if you have Zoom. And you promise to behave yourself. You can come hop on for the last 15 minutes and
I'll
chat with
answer
us.
all your IPM questions.
And in that time, we could also talk about your breeding. You gave away that thing. I don't know if you made the F2s, but I've grown some black triangle crosses. I'd love to hear what you think about the black triangle and whoever made the F2s.
What's Black Triangle?
88G13 hash plant crossed with Triangle Kush.
Oh, okay.
What does the ADH13 stand for?
Hash plant.
1988, and it's G13, which is a strain crossed to hash plant. So 88G13 hash plant.
Oh, 88. I'm sorry. I see.
Yeah. 1988.
We'll forgive you this one time, Zenfenol.
I've got some Triangle Kush cross to NL5 Haze in the current hunt. Again, I'll pop some more of those seeds.
I bet you that's going to be some good material, no
That
doubt.
was good last time. I like
Oh,
it.
you know,
I
listen,
love everything
this as
TK and
well.
OG.
What I was thinking about when we were talking about pesticides and you finding that bug in there, because I've thought this through. So you get spider mites that suck the juice out of your pot plant, right?
Yes.
And that's what they live on. So their bodies are consisted of pot plant material. Then your predators come along and they eat that spider mite, which is essentially pot plant material. And their whole diet is those spider mites. So they are created essentially from pot plant material. So when you end up with one or two and you're still smoking pot plant material, just in a different form. Which
Yeah,
is
I
way
would
better
powdery
than
mildew. Is that true for
pesticides.
powdery mildew too?
Oh, well, you're the expert. I'm just
Yeah, well.
pointing out one little life cycle kind of thing.
It's an interesting concept.
I like how you look at it. I will say that as far as we know, as far as I know at least, except for maybe in the case of like some slugs and snails, I'm pretty sure that there aren't really any pests that vector pathogens, at least arthropod pests that do that through the frash or the fecal route, or even through just like feeding on the plant. But who knows what's in store for us in the future with the way that some of this horizontal gene transfer happens. And a lot of microbes facilitate that kind of thing. Spider mites, though, fun fact, they have a bunch of different forms. So you touch on the fact that they're constantly taking in this tissue. They can look green, they can look sort of whitish in color, they can have the two spots, they can have none of those spots, and they can be like a dark, deep crimson red as well.
Yes, I've seen the dark crimson red ones.
That's usually a diapausing phase that they go through when the light changes and the temperature goes down and it becomes like winter.
Ah, okay. Because I was wondering that too, because a long time ago, you may have pointed it out to me, but when I saw that cave cricket in near my grow area, and I just knew that if it was eating on my plants, it would most likely be green. So I didn't freak out. But is that essentially true? Like if they're eating green, they'll be green. If they're eating,
not really.
Okay.
Not always, but like you are right that a lot of things will either be kind of a greenish color, either to avoid predation, so to try to be cryptic, or if they're essentially colorless in certain parts of their body, like in the case of the two-spot spider mite. Like the various like green colored things will like diffuse into their body and will color them in that way. But the thing that causes the two spots is actually, they're called ceca. So they're intestinal pouches where they're digesting the food. So, and that's not green, that's a sort of a dark black color. But that does happen in some things.
So is that dark black color bacteria? Like, is it digest? Well, how does it get the black color if there's no black to begin with?
Well, I think because it's breaking down, and so like those things that give it like the color, like the chlorophyll and that sort of a thing, are getting broken down.
Now you made me think of something I don't want to think about.
Yeah, well, what goes in?
Yes, doesn't come.
But but a lot of times this is very nitrogenous, and they want to keep as much as the liquid is inside them as possible. Usually, a lot of arthropod frass is drier. Not all of it, though. Thrips, for example, is liquid frass.
And so that would basically evaporate off of the plant, essentially, so you wouldn't have to worry about the frass on your bud.
Basically, yeah. I mean, that's how I look at it. Everyone has their own level of threshold for that sort of a thing, and if that's just not something you can compromise on, that's an understandable concern. But I'm honestly of the opinion that I don't think it's a really huge issue, and certainly better of the other options that are out there about chemical agents and adulterants. And even if you think it's a perfectly safe material, you never know what the source could be. Maybe the source for the product changes. Maybe other things that are just on the label are being applied with it. I don't want to sound like I don't know, like like a part of the intellectual dark web, but I don't know. I just never know. You never know with some of these things. So I take the biocontrols over it personally.
I do as well. I'm all for eating bugs, and then keeping your environment dialed in as much as you can to avoid all the other sorts of pests that you might come across cultivating cannabis. We're coming up to that final 10 minutes here, so I wanted to go around the panel and give everybody a chance to give their final thoughts and shout outs and plug anything that they may have going on. So first, I want to give it over to Dr. MJ.
Hey, yeah, if you guys had fun doing that little giveaway, we're going to do something really similar next week for the New Year's Grow Challenge. We got a MyGrow array, a Mars FC3000, AC Infinity fan, a couple of Patreon memberships to Growcast, and 5 Cocoa for Cannabis t-shirts that we're going to give away sort of lottery style like that for all the growers in the New Year's Grow Challenge. So sign up, grow together. There's 400 of us. We just germinated. It's not too late to sign up and grow along. I had fun, guys. I was a little bit quiet towards the end, but I always enjoy being on the show with you guys. And, check out my YouTube channel. Come and visit us at cocoforcannabis.com. And I will see you guys next week. Thanks, panel. Thanks, chat. And thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Dr. MJ. Always a pleasure to have you. And I think the people do really greatly enjoy giveaways. Some of those lights you listed off are very impressive. I personally am a fan of the new MyGrow lights, the arrays. I haven't used them, but just the form factor, the price point, and the efficiency, I think is great for home growers, and it could be used at a commercial scale if people wanted to go that route. So big shout out to Shane over at MeGrow or MyGrow, however it's pronounced. I think they're putting out great lights, and shout out to you for giving some of those away to the community. That's really awesome that you're able to make that happen. So I wanted to pass it next over to Matthew Gates.
Yeah, hey everyone. I really enjoyed the conversation and the chat especially. And if Cheddar Bob has any other questions, I'm happy to talk to him. I think that they are currently downloading Zoom, it says on the chat. So I don't know if they'll be in time, but if you want to find my information about pests and other integrated pest management subjects like broad mites, russet mites, predatory mites, banker plants, that kind of a thing, you can find most of that information on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, which is the same account that I use in the chat. You can also find me on Twitter at SyncAngel and on Instagram at SyncAngel.
Thanks as always for joining us. I appreciate your time, and I also appreciate the content that you're putting out there for the community. It's always what I'd consider top quality and always improving. So cheers to you for that, and spending your time with us each week, 2 hours dedicating to hanging in there and just waiting for your opportunity to jump in and answer IPM questions and give that perspective is so helpful that I'm very thankful that you've been able to stick around and help us out with all that great information. Next up, I wanted to pass it to the American one.
Jack, thanks for hosting again. Shout out to the panel, everyone in chat. I'm excited to be in the NYGC Cocoa for Cannabis Grow Off. I have my fingers crossed seeds that will germinate and move on. If not, I got backups. And yeah, so I encourage everyone to get in there. There's still time to get in, and it's not really a grow off competition. It's a grow off together thing. So that's cool. And I wanted to say, hit up Matthew Gates for your IPM stuff. Hit up Brandon Russ for his newts, beans, and fruits if you're in Oklahoma.
And microbes.
Skier somewhere. Yeah, newts, microbes. And don't forget Jack Greenstalk's 50 Strains of Green. And peace out to all yous, man. It was cool. I'm glad we got to a lot of stuff in chat and gave out some stuff. That was awesome. So peace out, everyone.
See you
Thank you
next
so
week.
much. Thank you so much for joining us, the American One. Always a great pleasure to have you, and thank you for giving basically everyone's plugs. You're a great person going around the panel and touching on everybody and making sure they get what they're doing out there to the community. So thank you so much for that. I wanted to pass it over finally to Brandon. I know you're doing some breeding with the TK crosses. I was saying earlier that TK and OG Kush are some of my favorite strains. They are, at least OG Kush is going to be featured in 50 Strains of Green. So I just wanted to get quick thoughts on the TK crosses that you're breeding with, and then you could give your final shout outs.
This is the only one that I did was the TK NL5 Haze. I crossed it with the lime. It's nice. It's the female was the TK NL5 Haze, and it was one of the phenols that I selected that I took a clone of from the facility because it was just really nice and big and hardy, and I put it in the backyard and it got freaking huge. And that's the one that I hit with the lime. It creates all of the crosses so far, all across the board, really have the male dominant structure, which was really what I was going for. Really wide, broad leaves, short stature. This one has like incense musk. You'll get some, with more of the haze that comes through, which is this like kind of like a citrus pepper kind of note.
That's a perfect way to say it for haze.
So yeah, and then I'm growing some more of the original seed stock, the sisters of what I created right now in the greenhouse, because he gave me a ton of seeds. I mean, he probably gave me like 150 seeds at least. So I'm just running a bunch more. It's gonna be fun. I did a bunch of other crosses too. I got the last one, which is the Gorilla Glue 4 reverse back cross that I made like a couple years ago, and I was running that, and I crossed that one with the Lime 1 back cross too. But I'm waiting.
For the people out there who don't know, could you give like a 10-second explanation of what is reverse back crossing?
Yeah, so when I first started growing, the guys that taught me, they had created the Afghani bull rider, and they created it from a herm flower. And what had happened was the Afghani that they had thrown some banana in the buds, some little pollen sacs, and so they had a couple of seeds in the flower. A lot of times what'll end up happening is if you take a cannabis plant a really long time past flowering, or if you stress it enough, you can pull out, like, it'll herm, basically. It'll have the little bananas in there. And I was told that if you take those out, you can pop those open and you can hit the thing with it to make seeds, to make basically a feminized version of itself. That's what I did.
I was just reading, by the way, recent research that just came out that apparently doing this once, if I'm interpreting the literature correctly, and I'll share it with anyone who wants to see it, doesn't seem to have a problem with like inbreeding, stress, or anything like that. So just wanted to put that out there.
You know what was interesting is different seeds that I had popped, and I ran all of them, and I selected the one that I liked most because it resembled the Gorilla Glue most. It's completely identical as far as the flower structure and the terpene profile, the high. The only thing that's different is the thing that I hate the most about Gorilla Glue is that it just flops all over the place and it stretches everywhere. So this particular one stayed nice and short and squat, and that was the
NL5.
thing that really. No, this was the Gorilla Glue reverse back cross that I was running. Yeah. And then I hit that clone because I really liked it. I hit that clone and I hit the Gorilla Glue.
I was one more question before I get your final where we can find you is how long did the TK NL5 take roughly in flower? How many weeks?
9 to 10 weeks.
Sounds good. And where can we find you on social media?
Rust Brandon, all one word. I'm shadow banned, so you have to type it in all the way.
That's a bummer, but also check out the Black Label Organics and Majestic Craft Cannabis as well. Brandon will be featured in 50 Strains of Green.
Yeah.
Bokashi Earthworks is the one that's probably the safest. It doesn't seem to get shadow banned because there's not really the cannabis content, just education over there.
Yeah, I have been like, I don't go on there very much. I need to post more just education stuff over there. But also, if you follow hashtag biological crop steering, that's a really, I mean, if you don't want to follow me and you just want just the education, you don't want to see cannabis or anything like that for people who maybe have pages are flooded with cannabis, that hashtag doesn't get used very often. And when it does, it's just like usually an education post.
Good to know. I always appreciate the education. I'm trying to do a lot of that within the book, 50 Strains of Green. Brandon Russ is featured. I used his photos of GG4, also known as Original Glue or previously known as Gorilla Glue 4, and his own original creation, Limarilla, is going to be featured in there. I want to shout out the community for all the support. It's still in pre-order until January 7th. You got to get your payments in for the few who have not done that already by January 6th. But there's already been 97 pre-orders. So I've been blown away by the positive response and just want to say thank you to everybody who has already put in a pre-order. And I just can't wait to print, sign, and ship them all out to the people. So thank you so much for the support. I'm at Jack Greenstock on Instagram and Cannabis, Jack_Greenstock on Twitter. You can email me at jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. Thank you everybody for coming. Peace and love. Jack Greenstock signing out. See you next week.
Grow with love, everyone.